Welcome to this talk. I'm Alessandro Tempio Calvino, a PhD student at EPFL, Switzerland, and today I present the paper Improving Standard Cell Design Flow Using Factor Form Optimization. This is a joint work with X, the Moonshot Factory, UC Berkeley, and Google. There exist multiple ways of representing Boolean functions. One is the sum of product. It consists of product terms of literals that are all together to realize a function. There exists also an extension of sum of product that is called the factor form. Factor form consists in factoring some product terms or literals in a sum of product. This is very similar to factoring in classic algebra. And we can share some terms such that the number of literals of the function can be reduced. For example, here in this example from 9 to 7. And factor forms are very interesting because they correlate very well with the number of transistors in the realization of the function in CMOS, because each literal corresponds to a transistor and an AND or OR operation corresponds to a transistor in series or in parallel. Significant work has been made in the 80s and in the 90s to synthesize minimal factor forms, which means a factor form with the minimal number of literals. And many of these methods are still in use today. But modern logic synthesis nowadays relies on the end-inverter graph to carry the optimization. Because it's very simple, it consists only of one primitive, that is the AND gate plus an inverter. Algorithms that work on the AIG are very scalable. Optimization usually consists in optimizing for size and depth of the representation, but on the other hand, it doesn't guarantee the optimization of factor form literal count. This is an example of how we can improve the literal counts on a Boolean function. For example, here there is the DAC23. If we represent it as a sum of product, we have 12 literals. If we factor it with literal A and A negated, we can reduce it to 10 literals, and this is the minimal factor form. But there is still a better implementation of this, where the XOR3 is not represented as a factor form, but is decomposed in two factored forms. So one additional node, that is an intermediate operation H, is created as XOR2, and then is reused inside F in two positions. This is not anymore a factor form because H is reused, but this implementation has less literals. So this means that global literals minimization is different from minimum factored form. So the contributions of this work is AIG-based factor form literal count minimization framework. We implemented a portfolio of techniques to globally minimize the number of literals, and they consist in readapting several algorithms that are in use in AIG optimization nowadays, like Boolean resubstitution, AIG rewriting, refactoring, and remapping. We show up to 5.3% reduction in literal count and 7% in area after technology mapping. Moreover, we describe some applications in logic synthesis and transistor level area minimization. In this section, we show the relation between factor forms and AIGs. Factor forms can be represented as a syntax tree, where nodes are AND or OR operations and the leaves are literals. Similarly, we can represent factor forms as an AIG, but instead of the literals as leaves, we have variables, and instead of AND and OR nodes, we have only AND nodes. So AND nodes can be obtained from OR nodes by using De Morgan's law. Moreover, edges can be complemented, and here they're shown in with dashed arrows. And one of the characteristics of the factor form is that each node has a single fan-out. and such ends in an AIG representation of a factor form maintains this property, and so we can say that an AIG representation is a factor form because it has only nodes with single fan-out. So we can say that AIGs can represent factor forms, and generally AIGs are not factor forms. In fact, in AIGs, nodes can have multiple fan-out. But factor forms can be included in AIGs and can be used to cover completely an AIG. For example, we can start from the primary outputs to the primary input and creating factor forms and extending them until we find nodes with multiple fan-out. For example, like this. And in this example, there are 2 factor forms that can cover the entire AIG. Hence, we can say that we can define the factor form literals included in an AIG as the sum of the literals of each factor form. But actually, there is a much easier, simpler formula to describe factor form literals in an AIG. And this depends on the number of outputs on 2 times the number of 2 input gates minus the number of 2 input 3 nodes, that the 3 nodes are the nodes with single fan-out. So in this work, we target logic optimization using this new cost function. So we reformulate AIG optimization that targets the minimization of factor form literal counts that are defined in the AIG. And we implemented Boolean resubstitution, AIG rewriting, refactoring, and remapping. Most of the algorithms for logic minimization rely on local transformation, on peephole optimization. So here is really easy to track the change in factor form literal count also in a local region of the graph. For example, the number of factor form literal locally depends only in the number of nodes that are added and removed, and additionally the number of 3 nodes that are added and removed. So 3 nodes, I remind you, are the nodes with a single fan-out. And so it's simply from a local analysis, we can compute the change in factor form literal count globally by tracking the number of gates and the number of 3 gates. Normally in AIG optimization, only the number of gates are tracked, and this is achieved by using referent counters and computing recursive referencing and dereferencing. But we can do the same thing also to track the number of 3 gates. This means that we can implement the same algorithms with this new cost function, having negligible runtime overhead, because the underlying computation is the same. Moreover, there are transformations that, even though they reduce the number of 2 input AND gates, they might increase the number of factor form literals. On the other hand, there are other transformations that can reduce the number of factor form literals and by increasing the number of AND gates. Here there is an example of factor form literal optimization applied to a graph. On the left, there is an AIG that contains 3 factor forms and has 15 literals. By applying some optimization, in particular here there is a resubstitution that is applied to the target node, we can reduce the number of factor form inside the AIG and reduce the number of literals from 15 to 14. Notice that the number of gates remain the same, hence this type of transformation cannot be found by traditional AIG optimization that is just based on size and depth. Moreover, if we go to technology mapping, the graph on the right has a 15% reduction in area. In the experiments, we start from pre-optimized designs by running 2 iterations of compressed 2RS in ABC. And then we created 2 flows. The first one, keeping iterating 2 times compressed 2RS in ABC, and the second one by iterating 2 times the new script for factor forms literal count optimization that mirrors each command of compressed 2RS, but with factor form literals as a cost function. And then in these experiments, we compare the literal count and then the results in area after technology mapping. Here, this graph shows the improvement in literal count after the optimization. We can show up to 5.3% improvement in factor form literal count on the benchmarks. In this experiment, instead, we show the results after going to technology mapping, and we show really good correlation between the number of factor forms literals and their area after technology mapping. And we achieved up to 7% area improvement over the classic script in ABC. Finally, I would like to discuss some applications of this method. Also in the previous slide, we noticed how we can use these methods to improve the classic optimization for CMOS technology. This new cost function offers new opportunities to restructure combinational logic, providing better accuracy because it's closer to the CMOS implementation. And this helps to reduce the gap between technology-independent logic synthesis and technology-dependent logic synthesis. We described before that factor forms are really well related to the number of transistors in the implementation at CMOS level. And this is because a factor form describes the parallel and serial connection of transistors. So a serial connection is defined by the AND gate, while a parallel connection is described by the OR gate. And so factor forms can also be used to generate the pull-up and pull-down transistor networks in CMOS. Hence, since AIGs contain multiple factor forms and we implemented methods to optimize globally the number of factor form literals, these optimization methods can be used to minimize globally the number of transistors. Preliminary experiments show that some useful transistor-level networks are not included in some standard cells. And so this can be also used as an exploration method to go towards transistor-level customization. To conclude, we presented an optimization methods for factor form literal count, and the optimization we propose is carried on the end inverter graph, and as such is really scalable. We provide better accuracy than traditional method since factor form literal count is a very good proxy for transistor count. We showed an improvement up to 5.3% in literal count and up to 7% in area after technology mapping. Moreover, we've shown some applications for logic optimization for CMOS and automatic transistor level synthesis. Thank you for your attention.